that's true. Naked Palpatine.
Oh, you pick that one. Fresh out of the clone tank, nude Palpatine is my
Well, that's the first thing I think of when you say Dark Empire Palpatine.
Hello everybody, and welcome back to the land of Middle-earth with Amazon's Rings of Power, Season 2. Is this worth watching? Yes. This season is a remarkable improvement over Season 1. I think the story that they've tried to tell in both seasons, everything that they're trying to accomplish is on paper fantastic. I think presentation-wise, I think pacing-wise, Season 1 was rough. And I'd say some of that still carries over into Season 2. I.e. the stuff with Gandalf, which we knew it was Gandalf. The Half-Foots, which are just... It is so utterly disconnected from the main plot. Like, it sets up Gandalf, of course, and kind of give us some more world building in terms of, the hobbits. They don't just all live in the Shire, like there are nomads, and some of them live in these kind of like cave structures, it all depends on where they live and stuff, but they all have their similarities, but they're not exactly the same. But again, this is also the thousands of years before The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings even happens. But still, it's interesting, but it is unrelated. I'm sure Gandalf will at some point in the show interact with Galadriel and everyone else and matter. Possibly. I don't know how much of a role Gandalf actually played during the Rings of Power. So on that front, that never really gets resolved in terms of it's just kind of on the side. Now, if you're going to have a completely on the side plot point anyway, then inclusion of a book character finally into live action is probably the best place to do it, here, on a plot that was already kind of meandering and sort of kind of pointless. I know that sounds kind of rough, but they do good things with it here with a particular character that is kind of, why are you here? And I know a lot of book fans get mad at Lord of the Rings by Peter Jackson for not including this certain character, but I'm not exactly sure how you would make that work without ruining the entire pacing of a film. But since the plot of Gandalf and the Half-Foots was already kind of meandering, I rather enjoy the inclusion they brought here. But we'll get into spoilers with that. Galadriel, I have not really warmed up to her. I like the actress. I think she does a phenomenal job acting. As somebody who wants to act, which, again, this may age poorly because I may never act. I don't know. Because with me, it's like, I didn't really do drama in high school or middle school. I didn't go to college, so it's like, you gotta work a 9 to 5. How do you find time to figure that all out? You don't really have anybody to tell you. But all that to say, I do appreciate good acting when I see it. But I also feel there's this knee-jerk reaction to not critique acting, which of course anybody can, right? Like, but at the same time, it's like, if you don't know the process, if you don't actually do it, then who are you to critique it? I guess just by not feeling it yourself, but I don't know. That being said, I think Galadriel's actress does a phenomenal job. I think one of the biggest issues of both these seasons as a whole is in terms of logical consistency. How do we get from here to there? Why does somebody do X, Y, and Z? I feel like it's much more about the symbolism and the thematic points than it is actual logical sense sometimes. For instance, the entire plot point with the orcs and Adar showing up to, I forget the city name, but where Celebrimbor is, and Sauron's also there. He's trying to get the ring. Sorry, he's trying to get the rings made. My bad. He's trying to get the rings made, and they attack, and he knows that. I mean, he wants the orcs, I imagine, to be on his side. But if you're trying to get this one thing done, why would you risk them coming by? Or why would you not relocate somewhere else to get this done? Well, that's fine. I guess it has to be done there, but I don't know. It's just weird on that front. And there's some other things like that. But as a whole, in terms of plotting, in terms of pacing, in terms of just the overall vibe, this season just a significant improvement. There's this sort of oppressive atmosphere as things have to get worse and worse um, before they will get better. And you kind of really feel that throughout the season. Um, and then there's, of course, and we've seen beats like this before, but if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I mean, whether it be from the books themselves to the films, which there's already book fans who crap on Lord of the Rings by Peter Jackson, but even if you love the Peter Jackson films, there's a lot of pushback that comes to the Hobbit movies, stretching out a single novel into a trilogy. Now, there's a lot of rewriting of history because, as far as I remember, I know it's kind of anecdotal, but when I'm looking back on other reviews back in the day, because YouTube was still a thing back then, what people were saying is that The Unexpected Journey came off very slow at the beginning, but it was pretty good overall. Desolation of Smog was fantastic, and Battle of the Five Armies was the bad one. Is what I usually. That was what was used to be said. Now the narrative is just they were just bad films, and to you I say, no, that is not true. I bring that up just to say like the corruption with the dwarves and the greed and the being illogical, going against the people who care about you most. We've treaded that ground before, but if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And what they do with Doran and his father here, I rather enjoyed. And then, because we'll see that later on in The Hobbit as well, um, book or movie, but I can't lie and say I didn't grow up with the movies, and I really like um, Martin Freeman is that Martin Freeman? That's it. I'm right, right? Now I have to look that up. Hold on. I had to make sure because I don't want to be super stupid, but I remember names. Anyway, he's Bilbo to me, and he will always be Bilbo to me. Um, that being said, um, I loved the Durin stuff here, but the standout of this entire season, the thing that makes this season entirely worth it and redeems the majority of season one, is Sauron's performance and Celebrimbor's. Two exquisite performances that truly, 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 truly are just phenomenal acting scenes. Whenever the two of them are together, they're good. And Sauron is just in the books, he's kind of just evil. And in the movie they make him just a giant eyeball. But yes, in the Silmarillion he was very much sort of the Satan character in terms of he showed up in plain sight. He looked beautiful, but he was manipulative, he was corrupting, he was good at what he does. And there is a multi-layered sort of performance where he's so pure evil, but he also doesn't, he tricks himself into believing he's not. And there's a beauty in the interactions he has with Celebrimbor, which come off as sometimes genuine, but also manipulation. And it's all in the performance that he gives. It just really stands out as probably the greatest achievement this series has made, is putting a face to Sauron and having, because that's a hard role to play. It's not. This isn't Game of Thrones, where everyone's a little bit gray. It's not. Tolkien, may have toiled back and forth on certain ideas, but at the end of the day, there is true good and there is true evil in this setting. And make no mistake, Sauron is evil. But there are nuances there, which make the performance so much more entertaining to watch. Morgoth was kind of the true Satan of the series. He's the one that first rebelled against God or Iluvatar. But Sauron followed. But Morgoth was always more like, I guess, Thanos. He wanted to destroy everything and rewrite it in his image. Whereas Sauron knows he's not powerful enough to rewrite everything in his own image. But he can take what already exists and manipulate it to his will, so he can fix the world. There's a bit of beauty in that, but all that to say, every scene, every moment between Celebrimbor and Sauron it's up there. It may not be up there with the books, because nothing's going to equal the books. The books consistently, even after, people read Malazan, Book of the Fallen, or Wheel of Time, or Realm of the Elderlings, or name your favorite fantasy series, you know what is always in the top 10, 99% of the time by most people? Lord of the Rings. And it's not just because it's a classic of literature. It's not just because people feel like they must have it on a list somewhere. It's because it's genuinely that good and has remained so all these years. From prose to the story to everything else, it has remained a testament of time. But while I don't think Rings of the Power will ever hold a candle to Tolkien's work, in terms of adaptation, I would say that pretty much all of season 2, when it deals with those two people, is right up there with anything that Peter Jackson has done. Like, just truly outstanding work, even from the writing, which felt like a massive step up. I mean, I don't want to spoil too much, but there's a specific scene where Celebrimbor tells Sauron, like, you really are the master manipulator. Or the master deceiver. You can even trick yourself. It's just... They were cooking this season. That's what I'm telling you. So do I recommend this season? Abso-freaking-lutely. Now, I know it's a lot to ask somebody to sit through season 1, which I'd say is fine and rather mediocre at most times, to suffer through all that to get to this season, but there are some really amazing moments that you just have to see. I can't fully express how much this season has turned me around. It's still not perfect, and I still think there's a lot that could be improved upon. But as a whole, is it Better Call Saul? No. Not in terms of like realism or anything, but in terms of writing, yeah, it's no masterpiece, I wouldn't say. I mean, there's very few on TV. I'd say Better Call Saul is one of them. But it is such a remarkable improvement. And if you like this universe and you're not... Because what do people really hate on? Right? They hate on the diversity. They hate on bad writing, which is debatable. And I would say there is some bad writing this season, but there's also some really good writing. But people make universal statements that it is entirely bad without doing the proper diligence and nuance for perspective. There are aspects of the season that are bad. There are also aspects of the season that are phenomenal. Trust me, I'm too small to give a damn. If I didn't like it, I would tell you. This is a man who has never watched a Disney-era show of Star Wars, because I personally have no interest. But if I did, I'd be honest, and I probably would dislike most of it, but I don't want to waste people's time, because I already know what I'll think of it. So why am I going to be negative? I went into this with no expectation. I don't hold the personal love for Lord of the Rings and Hobbit as much as I do Star Wars. I do love them. I do like them. But it's not as much of a priority in my life. So, and I've not read every single history of Middle-earth or this and that and that. I've read the Silmarillion. I've read the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit back when I was in middle school. So I should probably reread them again. I've watched the films more times. I've read The Children of Húrin in the Silmarillion and its own book. Varan and Luthien. Fall of Gondolin. Or whatever it's called. But I've not read everything. And most of this stuff is just historical, for historical posterity, in terms of what was going on in Tolkien's mind and how the world changed and evolved over time. But in terms of actual concrete stories, we don't have that many. So, but I've read more than a casual, I guess. But I'm no expert. Never claimed to be. But I do feel like there are thematic beats here that hit just as hard as the movies or books do. And I think in tone, in look, it feels more like the movies. I mean, if that's something that bothered you about season one, then I definitely feel this season kind of color palette wise, aesthetic wise, just feels more in line with those films, if that was something that bothered you. But long story short, I do recommend season two. If you can get through season one, I think you'll actually be duly rewarded by season two. And if you're just a hater who hates things, that's okay. I'm not going to make you stop hating it. But I do try to have some nuance. And if I thought this season sucked, I would have told you. I don't care about upsetting people, or I don't care about not upsetting people. I'll upset people by saying that I like it. But I think there's merit here. But I'm going to get into spoilers if you don't want that. Time to go. Episode 1, we have Sauron's speech. And we get to see he's about to be crowned. Adar's like his second in command. You have the orcs there. And, telling the orcs that I am your only salvation. Da-da-da-da-da. But Sauron is betrayed by Adar, who impales him with his very own crown, and he dies. But not really. His blood sinks into the earth, where he eventually reforms. And he is rebirthed as Halbrand, where he makes his way to all of season 1 that we saw with Galadriel. But what I think is interesting is there's a scene with this old man who he talks to, and it's just a bit of nuance, because there is a part of Sauron that regrets what he did under Morgoth. But the problem with Sauron is he doesn't want actual repentance, and he doesn't wish to actually change. He does feel emotionally bad about stuff, but instead, just like his master, he doubles down. He simply sinks further into himself. He likes Galadriel because he feels like it brings out the good in him. But you shouldn't need somebody else to be good. Somebody else can certainly help. It is true that partners can make each other stronger, make each other better, as a byproduct of being together. But it should not be a requirement. And Sauron, you'd rather have somebody around that just influences him to be a better person than do the actual hard work of becoming a better person. We jump to present day. Galadriel tells High King that Halbrand is Sauron. Elrond refuses to give the rings back to the High King and jumps off a ledge. And then we have the whole subplot again with Nori, Eleanor, and Gandalf walking together. He's not called Gandalf till the end of the season, but we all know it's Gandalf. Sidrin and Elrond are on the run. Sauron and Adar have a scene together, which is quite fun. It's I Vow to Serve. What a phenomenal acting performance here as well, where Sauron as Halbrand, because we saw him in the previous episode, or in the previous season, head toward Mordor. But we have Adar there. He pretends to be he pretends to be the human, and you know, Adar forces him to, swear loyalty at his feet, groveling, at the very bottom, you know. And you can make some Jesus parallels too in terms of like the prostitute who kissed his feet and blah 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 and da da da. But what's amazing, because you got to remember, this is Middle Earth. This is not Westeros, where people backstab each other left and right, and that's just common. That's the norm. That's real life. But in this fictional world, in Tolkien's world, to make a vow, to make a promise, whether on the good side or the bad side, it's not stupid in this world because it is meant to be taken very seriously. We should actually go back to something like that in real life, because it used to be a thing with like knights back in the day and whatnot. But my word is my bond, that used to mean something. It doesn't anymore. You shake hands with somebody after making a deal, you hope that they're going to follow through on that. Right? But you don't know if they're crossing their fingers behind their back. But in the world of Tolkien, if you say, I vow this, I swear it to you, much like Elrond in the previous season promised Doran that he would not tell his higher-ups anything. And he holds true to that because his vow is sacred. But very much the same, Sauron doesn't hold anything sacred. So there's this wonderful moment where Adar, Adar tells him, sit at my feet and tell me that I vow to serve. Camera pans down. Sauron's face is on the floor next to Adar's feet. We're looking at him sideways. I vow to serve. And it's just a slight, only slightly, I'm making it too obvious. There's a very slight upheaval of the cheek. Because he's smirking. Because of course he's not going to hold true to that. And it's just the actor playing Sauron. Phenomenal job. It's a very small thing. It's a very subtle thing. But it's done to perfection. That was one of the first moments where I'm like, hey, we're doing something here. Jump to episode 2. Doran and Disa, they're living day by day because I forgot that Doran was in a bad place with his father, and he was sort of exiled from being prince for like, I guess a day, because he quickly kind of reconciles with his dad. But it's also cool because we're expanding upon the cult, and in Silmarillion, we kind of hear about these two blue wizards who kind of go off. And we've only seen one so far, because it's not Sauron, it's not Salamuz. I'm freaking out. It's too early for this. Anyway, the blue wizard is a new character. Saruman. It's not Saruman. It's a new wizard. I don't really know what happened to the other one, but we have this one. But expanding upon the cult is cool, because they kind of teased that last season, and I was curious to see what else they would do with that here. This is an example of bad writing, though. So the wizard asked this skull guy to go capture the halflings and the wizard, and he goes, well, of course. He's like, what, my top 3 magical students couldn't beat this guy, and you're gonna do it? He's like, I don't have to. I'll just take the kids. And then you have no choice. So like, okay, but you can threaten to harm the kids. This already happened with those other students, and it didn't turn out well. So it was just a case of bad writing. It just was dumb. It was a dumb thing to say. It's a dumb thing to think. It's a dumb thing that the wizard would accept it and allow him to go. It was just dumb. It was stupid, not good writing. Like there's just no way around it. Like it was dumb. But moving on from that, um, and dude, every scene too between King Doran and Ardoran, I say Ardoran, but it's done so well. And at this point, he has the ring, and it's starting to affect him. You can see it a little bit, but they're also both very stubborn people, and they've been in fights before, and um, I can't speak enough to the quality of their relationship this season. Um, Galadriel finds Elrond, pleads with him, and it's just a really good scene because it actually kind of makes you appreciate some of the slower scenes in season one where they're friends, because here they are bickering over this entire problem. Cedrin and Elrond on the rings and the wisdom and fear, because other people are actively wanting to use this power against Sauron, and Cedrin rightly points out that you are right to fear it, but also think about the good that we could do with it. Which is true, but we know how everything leads, don't we? Sauron and Celebrimbor. Reunion and manipulation. Sauron is no longer he's not Halbrand anymore. He comes back as sort of this angelic, elf-looking person. He names himself Anatar, somebody sent by the Valar to go and help Celebrimbor make these rings. And of course, Anatar is making sure that no information from the outside comes into Celebrimbor's ear, so he's unaware that Sauron is out and about. I think he knows. No, I don't know. Point is, he doesn't know that Anatar is Sauron. Then we jump to episode 3. Beric, the horse, is reunited with Isildur. We also have little baby spiders, so that's fun. F spiders, by the way, just in general, in real life, but especially in fantasy fiction where they're big. Like, I hate spiders, so no. I would not want to fight a gigantic one. Sounds like nightmare fuel. No, thank you. Here's a big controversy. I think the way the season ended, I'm okay with it. But really, the people that are complaining about this mainly only watched the Jackson films. They did not read the books. They did not read all the extended stuff with Tolkien. They don't know what they're talking about. So baby orcs in normal family structures. So orcs are unanimously used as like the bad guy. But here we are shown that they have wives, that they have babies, because they do procreate. I never had an issue with that because it's in the works of Tolkien that they did procreate. They didn't come out of mud pits. If you think that, then you only watch the films and you're stupid, because it is not how it is in the books. So this show's actually being more true to lore than the sacred Peter Jackson films. That being said, I struggle to accept the fact that they're essentially just another faction, because they're always portrayed as the villain, even in the books. But at the same time, they are meant to be corrupted elves. They were at one point normal, which means that they do probably have souls. Which then retroactively kind of makes it a grand tragedy. Which, if there were ever to be, which there won't be, but if there were ever to be a story set after Lord of the Rings, no big wars, no big battles, but we need a reconciliation. We need the orcs to be redeemed, in my mind anyway. That's the only story left to tell in Middle-earth, is my feeling, because they get shafted. Because here you have Adar, who truly loves them, who wants to understand them, who... the problem with him, though, too, is that he does all this fighting, and is conquering and doing all this stuff for the orcs instead of, let's make peace with the other races. Let's show them that you're not monsters. It doesn't help that the way they act normally is so disgusting, so rude, so violent. They don't help their favors from having anyone think that they're not a monster. Which they are. I mean, they're cursed. They have this darkness in them. But Adar truly loves them. They see that. They appreciate that. Until they don't. And so they start feeling unloved. But Adar, who may get a bit full of himself, is trying to push too forward to kill Sauron in this season. There's a genuine love there that sometimes gets corrupted by the idea of power, as we see in this season. But he does love them. As opposed to at the end of this season, Sauron is now their boss and will remain their boss for the remainder of the timeline. But Sauron doesn't care about them. And while within Sauron's, structure, they'll never be anything more than they are. Because Sauron views them less than even the humans, elves, and dwarves do. They're just they're not even monsters. They're just tools to be used. So ultimately why I had a problem with this humanization of the orcs, I think it actually adds to this grand tragedy and evil of Sauron, is the fact that maybe in a different world, there could have been some sort of cure for them. Because that's the main reason that Adar even wanted the ring. Because when he had it on, he looked like himself again. But now, well, we know how everything goes. But I do like the idea of maybe in the Fourth Age, after the ring's been destroyed, there is no more Sauron. What's still left in the world? We got the orcs. I mean, there's spiders and stuff, and those things will always be a problem, I suppose. But the orcs are still elves. They still have souls. Should they not try to be redeemed? Is anyone truly, completely a monster? I mean, I think the biggest problem is that we never get to see... I mean, I guess unless you play the non-canon video game Shadow of Mordor, where you see kinder orcs on certain occasions, where they'll side with the person you're playing as. But outside of that, I mean, there's no real example of a kind orc. So it's, I can understand why people have issues with the idea of them being normal, but the idea of them procreating is not. It's not a modern idea, it's not a woke idea, it's a Tolkien idea. So take it up with Tolkien. Oh, wait, you can't, he's in the grave. But, sorry, was that a bit rude? It's also Tolkien's family, it wasn't trying to be. I'm just saying that, I mean, you can't take it up with the man himself, but the issue you have is with the man himself, not with woke ideologies of today. Arendir, the black guy. I remember his name this time. I still don't care. I'm sorry. He's around. He has stuff happen on this season. And this is probably the biggest failing that carries over from season 1, is this entire plot thread with him, the woman he loves, and the little kid. Like, I do not, in the hardest of hearts, give it a single damn about anything going on in that plot. Anything. No matter what happens this season. I don't feel bad for him at all. And I don't think that's because I'm heartless. I think the writers failed to make that something compelling. Because there's other parts of the show that did steer me, that did make my heart move. But this is not one of them. So this entire plot thread with this guy, who is still around by the end of the season, is the biggest misstep. Make me care about him or kill him off. Because he is not won me over. Whatsoever. I also don't really care about Isildur. I know he's very important, but I don't care about him. They introduced this woman that he likes, and there is sort of this parallel here because, I believe Aragorn is a descendant of him somewhere down the line. And it's kind of like the contrast. Because he wants to be the hero a little too much. He wants to be the good guy a little too much. He wants to be the main character a little too much. Which is all hinting toward where he shall go. And that premise I like. But that being said, actually watching scene by scene him and this lady and this other stuff, like, I just don't care. And maybe it is just me, maybe I'm just dumb, but I don't feel the show's done a good job of making me care about that particular thread. Episode 4. Strange singing man. And Gandalf gets stuck in a tree. We also learn about different hobbit settlements and cultures. Whatever. We jump back to the most important thing. Who is the man singing? Well, Tom Bombadil, of course. Who was in the novels, but never in the films. So it was quite good to see him. And that put a smile on my face. Now, I hear mixed things on his portrayal, but I personally loved it. It's one of my favorite parts of the season is Tom Bombadil. Also, what else do we have here? This is my theory. I've been saying this for, I'm sure I'm not the only person who said this, but I'm saying this. I haven't looked at what other people said. This is what I said. This is the ADHD coming out. I apologize. Very excited about it. This is my personal headcanon. This is my theory, my hypothesis. I really like this idea, and I'm going to stick with it, and I feel like the show gives me more ammo to believe so, which is that Tom Bombadil is Iluvatar himself from the Silmarillion. And my point of that is because when he's in the books, he kind of halts the story completely. It's almost like you shouldn't even worry about what's going on in the world while you're with Tom Bombadil. But that's part of the reason certain people get annoyed at those sections of the book, because they feel like such a halt on the progress of the story. Why are we breaking away from what Frodo and everyone needs to do when we're stuck with this guy? But you don't have to worry when you're in the presence of this being. Also, the ring doesn't affect him in the slightest. He seems to be simultaneously the most powerful character in the setting, but has ultimately no bearing whatsoever on it. What's the deal? Well, again, my hypothesis, and I know Tolkien hated allegory, but I think people misconstrued that because it was not so much that he hated allegory or thematic themes, or he hated blatant, obvious insertions where people cannot interpret for themselves. Like, there's no other way to view Aslan in C.S. Lewis's The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe than Jesus. There's no other way to interpret that character except for that. Which is why, with Tom Bombadil, there are ways to disagree with me, because he's more interpretable. Because Tolkien does not give you a definitive take. But I will say that I think it makes a lot of sense for Tom Bombadil to be Iluvatar, living in his creation, seeing what his people do. Because why else is somebody so powerful so blatantly not helping? People always go, why doesn't God save the world then? Why doesn't God stop children from dying? Why doesn't God stop natural disasters? Blah, 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 blah. Why doesn't Tom Bombadil do anything? Because he has created people that will do it for him. He doesn't need to save the world from Sauron, because Frodo and Sam and Gandalf and all these other characters will do it. He's already seen it happen. He just has to let it play out, so he doesn't interfere. He allows his free will creations to make up their own minds for the world to be as it ought to be. In his Song of Creation, in the Silmarillion, this was going to happen. This scene with him and Gandalf. The later stories with the Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, he saw it all. He knew it would come to pass. That's why the music played it. And again, there's no explicit confirmation of this. But there's a specific thing in here, too, where Gandalf says, then why don't you stop it? And the way Tom Bombadil responds, he never actually explicitly says, I can't. I can't stop it. But he is allowing it to go down. There's also a part where he says, I am the eldest. From the first raindrop, blah, 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 blah. I was there. Is a Iluvatar. Fight me. It's a Iluvatar. He's a Iluvatar. I'm right. You're wrong. Deal with it. Tom Bombadil is a Iluvatar. Hobbits connected. So the hobbits that what is her name? Eleanor Nori finds. They know of the leader of their faction because he said he was trying to find this place, and so they actually know one another, technically speaking. We jumped to episode 5. Opening with dwarves, very good. They make the Door of Doran, which is the moonlight door and password that we see in the Lord of the Rings. Sauron is really pushing for men's rings because the dwarves have their rings, the elves have theirs, but he wants the 9 for the men. I forgot to mention usurpation for the last video, but Pharazôn took over Numenor. That was like the biggest Game of Thrones thing. He usurped the queen. There's this woman that looks a little bit like Galadriel, and there you see this sort of, I'll say like yearning, where he goes, in a certain light you look like Galadriel. It's an interesting thing that the actor does, but I just want to mention it because I thought it was interesting. Back in Numenor, a holy site is defiled. People are persecuted for their faith, not for their faith specifically, but new aqueducts are supposed to come into this temple, so all of you got to stop worshiping here. Go find somewhere else. Breaking stuff, and I forget who the curly-haired guy's name was, but the guy that was friends with Isildur, he gets into this fight, and he won, clearly. But again, this is Middle-earth. People are so used to Westeros, Invincible, The Boys, where it's all about practicality over the goodness of man, over, redemption and sacrifice. And if this was Westeros, the logical thing to do would have been to kill this guy. Right? But, kind of the same thing as Ned Stark, like kind of was just a Tolkien character inserted into Westeros. This is a different world from Westeros. This is a world where honor is valued and dignity is appreciated. He has this boy by the throat. He could end his life right now, but that would be the wrong thing to do because all life is sacred. And he already showed him that he's better. So he walks away. The cowardly thing to do is what happens afterward, which is he gets impaled through the back. The guy lost, and to add to the dishonor, stabbed a man from behind. But of course, he's in charge, so he can get away with it. But that's the ultimate tragedy of Numenor as a whole and of this setting. Good men often do get punished for doing the right thing. But it doesn't mean it was wrong to do so. For if he had stabbed the man while he was down, he would have been just as bad. But yes, he loses his life. And I think it's one of the most powerful parts of this entire season and show was that scene. And I quite enjoyed that. I didn't enjoy his death or anything. I didn't have any particular love for the guy, but it was sad to see him go. I am proud of you. I think King Doran says to Doran. I think that's what that's from. I don't remember now. I just wrote, I am proud of you. Adar asks for Galadriel's help in defeating Sauron. Episode 6. Celebrimbor's anger. He's starting to get a lot more frustrated and angry very quickly, much like the Dwarven King is doing right now. Adar and Galadriel come up with this plan of perhaps the crown plus the rings can destroy Sauron, even though we know that's not the case. We have the court scene in Numenor. I don't have too much to say. You cannot master the secret fire. And then we also get to see Tom Bombadil's outfit, which was sick. Poppy kisses nobody. Don't really care. But hey, she's happy. So I'm happy for her. Friend or destiny. The choice is yours. There's this, like, whole gigantic spot with a whole bunch of twigs. And supposedly, Gandalf is supposed to find his staff there. Or he can go save his friends. And Gandalf chooses to save his friends. Which was very much a test. I mean, this is a spoiler section of the plot, but yeah, it was a test. He was meant to go find his friends. Sauron shows up to the dwarven place. He wants the ore, but the king says no because he wants a bigger profit. So it was just interesting to see Sauron interact with Doran. I thought that was cool. But yeah, by this point, King Doran is consumed. You know, he just wants more profit. He's greedy. He's hoarding. It's bad to see. The Queen of Numenor gets sacrificed, but she gets spit back out. So clearly the gods don't want her to die. Sauron also wants Adar's army. And we jump to episode 7. We have Sauron's further manipulations of Celebrimbor. I like how he uses the phrase, you know, of our precious creations. Well, the city is attacked by the orcs and Adar. Celebrimbor remains focused. Why is that? We'll get into that in just a second. But over on the other side, we get a reunion between Elrond and Doran, which you don't really notice it, but when you see them interact this season, you realize how long it's been since they've interacted, and you miss for the times when they just got to be nice friends. Celebrimbor and Sauron argue. This may be one of the greatest scenes in the entire season. It may be one of the greatest scenes in a live-action portrayals of Lord of the Rings ever, even though this is, you know, not in any book. But Celebrimbor has noticed the candle does not change. The fire pit does not change. A mouse, periodically, every couple hours, will show up in the exact same spot, make a little noise, and scurry away. And he realizes he's in this sort of loop. In a hell of a sort. And he goes, why are you doing this to me? You are no agent of the Valar. No agent of the Valar would do this to me. Sauron proceeds to try to gaslight him. He throws something at Sauron. Sauron easily dodges. Cracks the window. He hears screams. He looks around the room, which was bright and sunny and beautiful, and it is broken. It is dark. It is grimy. He heads outside and sees fire and smoke. It's perfect. It is perfect. It may be in a vacuum, but that scene is... if you still hate on the show, or if you can't even give credence to the scene, you're disingenuous. This scene is good. Just objectively speaking, it is well shot. It is well acted. Everything about it is perfection. It is perfection. And the acting, the chemistry between Sauron and Celebrimbor is 10 out of 10, out of this world. Peak. It is peak. and the frustration that Sauron gives as he pushes back more and more. Only for Celebrimbor to realize, on top of the fact that he's been lied to, he never got ore from the dwarves because, well, Sauron couldn't get it. So what instead did Celebrimbor use to make the 9 rings for men? Sauron's own blood. Which it's not explicitly in the text of Tolkien, but I think actually adds a deeper layer to the ring wraiths and everything that goes down in the Lord of the Rings movies, because, yeah, the One Ring, I think, too, but also the 9 Rings of Men have Sauron's blood in it. I just think that's genius, but one of the best scenes of the show, hands down. Celebrimbor goes out, he starts screaming how Sauron is here, but everybody doesn't believe him. He's like cracked, he's losing his mind. And that girl earlier that Sauron said looked like Galadriel, Celebrimbor's next to her. He's screaming, "That's Sauron! You need to get away from me! We need to stop him!" And Sauron so subtly manipulates Celebrimbor's hands. And when the girl tries to take him away, he says, "Don't touch me," in a fit of, like panic and stuff. But it's not actually him, it is Sauron who makes Celebrimbor push her off the ledge as she falls to her death. Just confirming for everyone that he's lost it. Loved it. Not to mention how he even got there in the first place, because Celebrimbor, who is a craftsman, he uses his hands quite often. To escape the situation he's in, because, after he's figured out the ruse, Sauron, of course, chained him up. So to get out of those chains, he breaks one of his fingers, which would severely affect his work, but what mattered was getting the truth out. But it didn't even matter because he was manipulated, and he didn't do it, Sauron, but used him, threw a woman off a building, so no one trusts him. So things are just getting worse and worse and worse. There's also a little bit of nuance, because Elrond says he ends up meeting up with Adar and Galadriel. He wants to say goodbye to Galadriel, and there's an orc who speaks up for him and says he has no weapons, so they allow him to, where he kisses Galadriel. Now, a lot of people got upset with this too, I think, at least from what I remember back in the day when this season was coming out, but I don't think it is romantic. I think it was purely just a way to give Galadriel a thing that would help her, unbind her restraints. Also, I'm just going to say right now, Elrond is the heart of this show. I love Elrond. Elrond is amazing. And when Elrond throws down, it's also amazing. I love the actor playing Elrond. I love him. He's phenomenal. Sorry, Hugo Weaving, but this man is Elrond to me now and forever. This guy gets it. You said you loved us. One of the orcs continually tells Adar, "We're going to have more of our men killed if we don't back down." But Adar is so focused on getting that ring, getting that power, so he could heal the orcs, but also so he could kill Sauron. And that greed, which I do think is coming from the ring and Sauron, is making a rift with him and his children. Also, Erendor just shows up. Oh, I forgot to mention, his girlfriend dies. I don't care. His girlfriend dies. The kid is somewhere. And Erendor's out for revenge. He just wants to kill Adar because his girlfriend died. And I wish, because, I understand intellectually. I would probably feel the exact same. The issue is the show has failed. When he is distraught over this, when he is longing for revenge, I should feel that. With every fiber of my being, I should be like, yes, get that revenge. Even if it's wrong. But I don't feel that way. How do I feel that way more about John Wick's dog than I do about this guy's love interest. That's a problem. You see what I mean? So Eredendor just doesn't work for me, but he's here. He's helping out now. He'll help with the final battle, I guess. Again, Sauron continues to gaslight and manipulate Celebrimbor. As he says, he doesn't want to hurt Celebrimbor. He doesn't wish to be cruel, but it is actually Celebrimbor who is forcing his hand so that he has to be rough and cruel to Celebrimbor. It's Celebrimbor's fault that he's getting punched in the face. Remember that next time you have somebody beating on you and wailing on you. It's actually your fault. I mean, maybe you're being a dick. But typically. Wow. And then on top of that, he says, I was tortured by Morgoth. I started to see it as a reward when he did, to see whose will was strongest. Like, bro's just warped. Like, do I feel bad for you? Not really. But yes, I'm sure in a similar fashion to what Sauron does with everyone else, Morgoth sort of had this control over his followers. I'm sure. But instead of breaking through that cycle of abuse, saying, hey, I'm not going to, if you truly are trying to fix the world, well, then you want to be better than Morgoth, right? Well, he does. Just not in the ways that would count. Instead of breaking the cycle of abuse by not hurting people the way that your master did to you, instead you double down. Say, like, well, you asked for it. Again, it sounds really silly and kind of childish when you say it like that, but there is this nuance in how Sauron's not only saying this to Celebrimbor, to kind of mess with him and gaslight him, but it's also a means of gaslighting himself. He does want to believe that he's better, morally speaking, too. Again, he's just trying to save the world by being in control of it. He really believes that. He's forcing himself to believe that. This is also where we get the line from Celebrimbor. Again, I'm paraphrasing, but he goes, you really are the great deceiver, for you can even deceive yourself. It's amazing. And then he also says here, what Morgoth wanted destroyed, I wanted perfected. There's also this sadness with Celebrimbor. He gets reunited with Galadriel. And he says, no, it's my fault. And she says, no, it's not. He says, no, because a part of me knew the whole time. Part of me knew there was something off. But I liked what he offered. He offered, my pride, he offered me, the chance to be one of the greatest inventors of anything ever. I would be remembered forever for this. So even when things were a bit off, when he may have been a little bit shady, I allowed myself to ignore it. Because I wanted to be great, because the seduction of that was powerful enough. And Galadriel admits for herself, too, that that's why she didn't see it with Halbrand. But one thing he says is also just, again, it's something I could feel like coming from Tolkien or from the Peter Jackson films. Light is stronger than strength. Sorrow will not be defeated by strength. It will be defeated through light. Through kindness. Through empathy. I mean, ultimately, there's a lot of great characters in Lord of the Rings. But at the end of the day, who actually saves the day? I mean, technically Gollum. Right? But it's Sam and Frodo who go through their entire adventure to reach Mount Doom, to end the threat once and for all. It is two little hobbits. Not particularly strong. Not even particularly wise. But decent folk who save the day. Also really cool scene. Celebrimbor comes to reprimand Sauron and put him down, as the soldiers, by Galadriel's speech, are now convinced that he is bad. Though they didn't apologize to Celebrimbor like they should have, but maybe we just didn't see. But Sauron goes, do you think You were the only one I was manipulating. The only one I promised anything to. And apparently every one of those soldiers was promised something to. And all of them turned their swords on one another and plunge. He didn't have to even really lift a finger. It was incredible. Galadriel and Adar talk again. Adar. He has the ring. But his mind's kind of cleared up. You could see him as he originally used to look as like an elf. Before he was corrupted. And he willfully gives the ring back. So it's like, if you defeat Sauron, get this done, I'll take my children back. And I'll reform them. We'll change them. We don't have to interact, but we will have peace. But then, oh, I skipped some things. I'm so sorry. My bad. Sorry, I skipped ahead. Sauron's men, Doran's men didn't come because currently, Doran the king is going to the mines and he's going to release something, so the men need to stay there to help. And Elrondor gets stabbed. He's fine though, so I don't really care. Episode 8, Balrog. That's pretty cool. And there's this sweet, sweet scene between Doran and his father, where, you know, because Doran tries to get through to him earlier by saying, like, you know, when I was young, you'd always let me be able to lift your arm a little bit in an arm wrestle to just let me believe that I could be stronger than you before showing me that you are the strongest that I've ever known. And he says, and he just begs his father to take off the ring, and his father says, you know, a dwarf does not beg. But then at the final moment, he finally does take off that ring and tells his son how he'd been right, and how that he had never allowed Doran to even attempt to beat his father. It was simply that you were just getting better and better, you were getting stronger. I never let you win. I never allowed you to feel you would win. You just were getting better. And he goes and attacks the Balrog. And then back over with Gandalf gets reunited with his friends, and there's the wizard that he met, and there's the skull guy who has a knife to the hobbits, and the blue wizard kills him. And they say, we don't know if we can trust you. I mean, who does that? And he's like, you'd feel pity for one who had a knife at your throat? And they say, yeah, we would. Which is what makes them good guys. And then Sauron kills Celebrimbor. It's an ending. This is what will make season 3 not be as good, because we won't have interactions between Sauron and Celebrimbor. But F in the chat, mad respect for Celebrimbor, who, despite being mentally exhausted, being mentally manipulated, and having his mind messed with constantly, considering where we started with this character too to where he ends up, it's like, it's so sad. But at the end of the day, he did manage to be himself, and it kind of spit in Sauron's face one last time. So props to him. Anyway, I mentioned the Galadriel and Adar scene a bit too early because I read my notes out of order. But yeah, so he says all the things that I said before. In other words, catching back up. And he sees the orcs. But instead, they don't embrace him. They stab him to death. Because he pushed too far. It was too little, too late. He had the realization of how far he'd been going too late. Sauron had already gotten to them. You know, because they felt at this point he didn't have their best interests at heart. Because they were he was allowing them to die. So they kill him. The only one who ever truly loved them in this setting, it seems like. They murder the one who cared about them the most. everything happens. Galadriel ends up fighting Sauron. Galadriel gets away because she jumps off a cliff with the rings. Again, this orc shows up to talk about should we retreat. Sauron immediately stabs him. And again, this is a bit of the tragedy, because he will not hear any retort. You will not tell me about the losses we suffered. I do not care. You are mine to do with as I please. Or as at least Adar cared. But this is the great tragedy, because for the rest of this show, and we know from The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, they never are anything more than they are. And that's Sauron's fault. But we set up for basically what we saw at the beginning of Lord of the Rings, if you watch the movies, which is the big war where Sauron is ultimately defeated, or at least his physical form is, right? This is where where that big battle where Isildur are supposed to, end the fight there, but it doesn't happen. And we're leading to that in the show, basically. In fact, I think the next season's going to have a bit of a year skip. They're going to skip a few years to get to that. So, but we're reaching toward what we already know. So, but the season does end with Gandalf. I mean, it doesn't end there. There's a couple other things that happen, but the thing that I like to think is the ultimate ending point is Gandalf realizing what Tom Bombadil is doing. And I also think it's a perfect explanation of why doesn't Tom Bombadil help during The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, because he doesn't need to. He knows now that Gandalf will remain true, and Gandalf will be there for any time where he might have been needed. His job is done. He got Gandalf to be the guy that he will be, so that way he can let Gandalf handle it from here on out. Because again, God doesn't like to mess with the freedom of his creation. He likes to let everything play out as it's meant to be played out. Because I'm still going with my theory about that. But they end their little scene by singing together, and I just thought that was a lot of fun. But yeah, I believe the next season will be war. Sauron versus all the dwarves, elves, and men as they go up to fight against Sauron and his legion, ultimately leading to The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. But I don't know when that season's going to come out, but we'll discuss it when that season drops and all the episodes are out, because I'm not going to do episode by episode. But anyway, as I said, remarkable improvement from season 1, and I do highly recommend it. This may be one of my longest videos as I'm not reaching now. Well, if we count the last video, I'm over an hour. So that's crazy. But yeah, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.